Hi, welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. It is Thursday, October 16th, and I'm Jessica Steinberg. I'm speaking today with diplomatic correspondent Lazar Berman. Hey, Berman. Hey, Berman. Hey, Lazar. How are you?
Hey Steinberg, I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, doing okay. It is day 741 of the war. This morning, Israel identified the latest two bodies received from Hamas as slain hostages Imbar Hayman and Muhammad El-Tarash. Hayman, 27, was murdered at the Nova Festival, her body taken captive, while Al-Atrash, 39, a father of 13, was killed while battling terrorists in the area of Nahal Oz on October 7th. With the return of those two bodies, reaching a total of 9 returned to Israel, 19 more are still reportedly held in Gaza. We'll discuss that issue, the status of the war, the end of the war in Gaza, and the latest in the Prime Minister's ongoing criminal trial. Stay with us. Okay, so Laser, we've been covering from afar the funerals that have been taking place for those whose bodies were brought back. Yesterday was Guy Iluz, Daniel Perez, and Uriel Baruch. Today, Eitan Levy, a cab driver killed, his body taken captive, will be buried, as well as Tamir Nimrodi, the soldier whose fate was unknown until just a day or so ago. He will also be buried today. And Hamas has now said that those are the bodies that they know of and that could perhaps more easily find. Um, what does that really mean for the ongoing ceasefire deal, for what is supposed to be happening in this first stage of the deal?
Yeah, so the big question right now is Hamas playing games, or are the conditions in the Gaza Strip such that they really cannot find all of them? Basically, what Israel thinks is that there are indeed plenty of bodies that they cannot reach right now, but that they are still playing games and that they can reach some if they so desired. Therefore, Israel is starting to slowly up the pressure on Hamas, mostly in the form of blocking reconstruction materials, material that would be used to rehabilitate the Gaza Strip. Things to start rebuilding roads and the like. They're not blocking medicine, baby food, and anything like that. Question is, whether that will be enough. Now, when you said at the beginning it's day 741 of the war, we're in this period. We're not really sure. Are we still in the war? What you've heard from President Trump, he said quite definitively, I think it was initially on Air Force One, and they said in the Knesset that the war is over and that we've moved on to a new period of peace and the end of.
And he keeps on stating that, right? He keeps on stating it over and over.
Yeah, he keeps on saying it. The question is, has Israel agreed to it? Not really, though. The English language document that Ron Dermer signed in Sharm el Sheikh initially did say that, and then there was a message from Gal Hirsch to the hostage families, which mentioned coming to the end of the war. But the cabinet never voted on anything like that. It's not like Israel ever declared an end to the war. And certainly you want to keep the military threat hovering over Hamas's head. I think it's pretty clear that one of the reasons that Hamas agreed to release all the living hostages up front, something it had refused to do for 2 years, was because of this growing military campaign in Gaza City. So anytime the president or anyone else says that this war is over, we're much less likely to get. The war is actually much less likely to actually be over because Hamas is much less likely to meet the conditions it needs to, and therefore, at some point, it will become clear that the only way to get them to do so is to go back to the war. So, the threat needs to be there, and you're hearing a sharper threat from Israel. You hear it from yesterday from Defense Minister Israel Katz, who said explicitly that if Hamas does not move forward on what it needs to do in this peace plan, that Israel will go back to war with the full backing of the United States. Now, right now, it doesn't have the full backing of the United States to do that. The U.S. is saying that is kind of making excuses even for Hamas. There was that briefing from two very senior Trump aides yesterday that we reported on, that they're saying, listen, it's a war zone. There's a lot of unexploded ordnance. There is a lot of rubble, so it's going to take time, and therefore other countries are going to have to come in, and we're going to do this on an international basis.
And what's the likelihood of that, Laser, of Turkey? Really, what is the likelihood of that in your mind?
If these countries come, I don't think they have a reason to not actually try to help find these bodies. The more important issue in the long term, I think, is what happens to the Gaza Strip and what happens to the disarmament of Hamas. And that is much more complex. Because what does disarmament of Hamas mean? What weapons do they have to give up? I would assume it really will mean all of them. But how does anyone, no one, there's no accounting, there's no inventory of what weapons they have. Who is going to actually do that? And who is going to check and who's going to verify, and what happens if they don't? I would imagine best case scenario, it'll kind of be like in Lebanon, where Israel, if that Hamas has no legitimacy to walk around with weapons or to hold weapons, so that if Israel discovers that there are, it's able to strike. Now, that will be much more complicated if there's this international force. And I spoke about this last week, that this international force might sound great. There's tens of thousands of, I don't know, Indonesian and Pakistani troops. Now, does anyone think the Indonesian or Pakistani troops are going to risk their own lives to protect Israel? No. That means you have foreign troops from powerful countries that Israel has an interest in developing relationships with that are in the way of our operations, meaning either the IDF can't operate or can't operate ideally, or it risks hurting or killing troops from another country, which is a huge diplomatic problem. So there's no easy answers here. And that's why I say this is the really complex issue moving forward. The only way it's going to happen easily is Hamas understands that it has no other choice. But if this threat of war is removed, then it will believe that it has many other choices.
Go back to what you had said earlier about, what are some of the points of pressure that can be carried out now? You said holding back on the reconstruction. There's also the holding back or slowing the humanitarian aid. Where do you see that playing a role in the next days and weeks?
I don't think that's going to be very effective. If Israel wanted to be a little bit more aggressive without going back to war entirely, it can start re-arresting some of the people that it released into the West Bank. That should be very easy. And I think that could be an interesting way to shake it up as well.
Is that being discussed?
I've heard it be discussed by analysts. I have not heard of it being discussed by policymakers, though I would imagine that it is. But that is something that I cannot say for sure. But I think that would be a pretty significant pressure point as well. Ultimately, what they really will be scared about is military pressure. And right now, that is not on the table. And although you've heard Trump start to talk about them being destroyed if they don't disarm, so Trump seems to remain quite serious about this, which is good news for Israel.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break for a moment. When we're back, let's talk about the latest, or what happened yesterday, really, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trial. So stay with us. Okay, so the prime minister has bronchitis, which was what he said was the reason for him having to finish his time on the stand yesterday. Tell us what you're hearing. You don't generally dive into this, but you did yesterday because it sort of veered into diplomacy. But let's hear what you have to say about yesterday's discussions about this particular issue.
Yeah, so the trial has slowed down because of the peace efforts, and now it's kind of getting back on track. So Netanyahu was in court in Tel Aviv Wednesday morning yesterday, and he said that he had a cold. It's not getting better, and his doctor told him to take a rest. So his trial was shortened, and most of the afternoon didn't happen. Then news came out from the prime minister's office that he actually has bronchitis, which is more serious. Now, there's the trial issue, but what can you do? He's 75 years old. He got sick. That's just part of the game. And it's not the first time. There's been plenty of other times where he hurt his back or he wasn't feeling well or all sorts of things. Yeah, so he also had surgery.
He doesn't have to get a doctor's note.
I'm not sure about the legality of it. He might need one, but he has.
He might need to. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, he might. I'm actually not sure. But he sees doctors all the time, and they told him he needs bed rest. That's fine. This got a little bit thorny because the night before he had gone to Beilinson Hospital, now called Rabin Medical Center in Petah Tikva, where there were 5 newly released hostages, and he met them, and he was very close, and there's a picture of him touching the face of Guy Gilboa Dalal. And I think I don't need to say, but let me stress it, these released hostages have been in extremely unsanitary conditions for 2 years. They've been under significant stress. They have not been adequately fed, and they've been around all sorts of disease. I mean, Gaza is full of disease in terms of dead bodies, dead animals, and the like. It's just not a healthy place. And soldiers have gotten sick as well. So you're taking these people with compromised everything and definitely compromised immune systems, and they're in a hospital for a reason, and we still don't know what their entire condition is. It seems like they're not in immediate danger, but they still have to understand what they can eat, what they can't eat, what's in the long-term effects will be. And someone with bronchitis is getting close and personal. You actually had the doctor, a very esteemed doctor, Professor Chagai Levine, who's the doctor of the Hostage Families Forum, who tweeted, and he said, if Netanyahu has a cold that refuses to go away, then why did he visit survivors of captivity with weakened immune systems and put them at risk? Because Netanyahu knew he had this problem that wasn't going away. So that's where it became more controversial. I just would remind our listeners, Netanyahu, next week, he has his birthday. I think it's October 21st, day before my birthday, and he'll turn 76. And he had his prostate removed in December, which is, he was general anesthesia. He was totally out. He had hernia surgery last March. He had the flu. He had a pacemaker installed in 2023. And he fainted also in 2023. And they said it was dehydration, but who knows? So he's not young. He works very long hours. He's under a lot of stress. He's been injured in his military career. So he has health issues, and we know, we've had prime ministers that, because of health issues, we had Ariel Sharon who had a stroke. So, God forbid, I hope this doesn't happen. But we know that, men at that age with health conditions who are working very hard, things could happen unexpectedly. So it's something to keep an eye on. And hopefully Netanyahu will prioritize his health, and it seems like he's doing it here. He has to do it a little bit more responsibly. It's hard to balance it, right? Because he's got a war to run. He's got these hostages to get out. He's got the politics to pay attention to, where we're coming up to an election at some point. So it's hard to balance it, but it seems like he's going to be staying home. But he has two speeches scheduled for later today for the October 7th memorials. So we'll see how he handles that as well. Again, something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Lazar, I don't know if you want to get into this right now, but I think it's very curious that he went to Beilinson. There's at least 3 hospitals that are caring for the released hostages. At one of the hospitals, Ichilov in Tel Aviv, there are some of the hostages whose families have been very virulently anti-Netanyahu. Beilinson seemed to have some hostages whose families were less against the prime minister. Do you feel like getting into that at all? Thoughts about that? About where he chose to go?
It would be speculation on my part, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think everything he does, he has an eye toward the political ramifications and the way it'll look. Remember on Monday there was all that speculation about him going to Sharm el Sheikh, to the Sharm el Sheikh, the Egypt Peace Summit, and he ended up not going. It seems like all or some of the reason is the fact that his ultra-Orthodox partners would not be happy about him moving around on a holiday. He's not a religious man, based on what he said in the past, he doesn't even believe in God, but he does believe in his coalition or his own political survival, so he didn't want to take that risk, which could have been significant. He could have talked to a lot of world leaders that he wants to make peace with or normalization agreements with, and he chose not to. So it shows how high up on his priority list domestic politics play. So it could be here as well.
Okay. We'll see what happens with that part of the story. And we'll see what happens with the health of our prime minister. So thanks, Lazar, for laying that out for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening to the Times Visual's Daily Briefing. Stay tuned for tomorrow's installment. This episode was produced by the Podwaves. Any comments you have, you can always drop us an email, podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until next time, take care and be well.